We are so glad that Dr. Ramirez is with us. There are still people that they are coming, so they are eating, but we are going to start. And let us begin with a prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for the delicious food that we were able to eat. Thank you for the spiritual food. Thank you that you wonderfully and that you created us. And I pray, Lord, that the things that we are learning, that we can learn to better serve you, Lord. And we don't have power to do, but if we give everything to our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, He can do that through us, Lord. I pray that we would experience the beauty of complete salvation that was given in the cross, even through our bodies. Thank you in the name of Christ. Amen. So, Dr. Ramirez, for those of you who are maybe watching and turning on now, I just wanted to introduce him as a medical doctor, research scientist, and author of books, and one who travels around the world, who does not only write about this and talk, who lives. I had the opportunity to see personally how not once, but several times, how he lives his life. And you're going to see that in the evening, he's not going to eat, absolutely. And he would up in the morning, walking and using his body and everything. And so all that he's going to tell you, he is practicing in his life. We are so glad that you're with us today.
Thank you, thank you. People ask me, Doctor, how you got into doing what you're doing? Let me tell you the story. I originally studied computer science. It was back in the 1990s where there was few computer scientists around, where people didn't even have access to internet. So when I was in my last semester of computer science, my friends started running, and I started running with them. And it ended up being I was always the last place among my friends. And I said, this is not right. This is very shameful that I'm always, the last one among my friends. So I said to myself, I need to find out what are the people that are winning the race. What are they doing? So I went to the library of the school to read about it. And I found out one of the secrets of these Kenyans and Ethiopians, they are all on a plant-based diet. That's one of their secrets. So I said to myself, I'm going to give it a shot. Let's see what happens if I switch my diet. Sure enough, I started becoming so fast, I could see it. This was not psychological, I could see the times that to the point that I started getting first places in my town. I could see the impact of that. And not only that, it was my best semester in my undergraduate. All my notes, top notes, top notes, top notes. I could see how my mind changed as a result of that. In parentheses, last summer, I ran a 5K. I won the 5K. I mean, not my category, the whole race. I'm not supposed to do those things, at my age. So I finished my bachelor's in computer science. And in front of that institution, there was a place that offered masters in computer science. So I go ahead and apply. They liked my profile. They even gave me a full scholarship. But while I was waiting to start my master's program, I had a brother that was working in a lifestyle center. So located in Southern California. So we went to visit my brother, supposedly just for the weekend. And as I get there to that institution, Dr. Thomas was the director of that institution. When Dr. Thomas heard that I know about computers, he was like, hey, I have many computer problems here. Would you mind helping me this weekend that you're visiting your brother? I said, sure, I'll be happy to help you. In 1 weekend, I fixed most of his computer problems. He was so impressed, he offered me a job on the spot. And to me, this was very confusing. I'm supposed to start my master's program. He's inviting me to join his staff. I cannot do both, geographically speaking. So after praying and thinking about it, I decided not to do my master's and rather join that institution, then my life changed completely as a result of that. When I saw with my own eyes how patients that were diabetic, we were helping them, send that diabetes into remission. People with high blood pressure, certain autoimmune conditions, and all kinds of things were getting better. That's when the desire came to my heart. You know what? Computers are nice, but this is what I need to do with my life. And that's when the desire to go into medical school came to my heart. I also work, we're doing some interesting outreach here in Tennessee among the Amish people. And then also in South Dakota, where they have the famous Faces of the Presidents there, 50 minutes from there. There is a lifestyle center. Louis Torres was also, running his program there. I'm also a trainee from him, and that's where actually I met my wife. She was studying there, and I also work in Hawaii with Dr. Sang Lee. We're doing lifestyle programs for people from Asia and for people from America. That was a nice middle point. And as I mentioned, I was in Norway. I was involved for the Lifestyle Center, it's called Fredheim, and also the European Bible School, both of them. And also, I have worked with Weimar and Dr. Netley for many, many years. And currently, I am in Pennsylvania. And again, the book is going to be available there. This is another one of the books I participated with, the book Rethink Food, and personalities such as Dr. Barnard right there also. Dr. Furman writes there, Dr. Michael Greger, Hans Deal, and other leaders in the lifestyle medicine world. This one you can find on Amazon. So let's talk about internal clocks and your health. This is something that I'm quite passionate about it. And when you go and see around the universe, you can see that things have certain cycles. Just put your microscope and you will see, how the planets are going around. There's a certain order that happens in the planets, as well as are cycles that occur in the weather. There's time that is cold, there's time that gets warm, there are times that as the nature seems to go dormant, then comes back in the spring and so forth. There's a definite cycle in this nature. And the ones that have the PhD on cycles are females. They know that there's that monthly cycle, isn't it, that is happening in their body, in which the body is preparing to have preparing for a new baby. And if conception doesn't take place, then all those preparations are turned down and the cycle starts over and over again. But we are learning something fascinating. We are learning that encoded in our genes, we have clock genes, that because we also have internal clocks in our bodies. See, there is science called nutrigenomics, how the nutrients that you are eating have a direct impact at multiple genes in your body. But we're learning something. It's not only what you eat, but when you eat can have an effect on your health. And see, every single one of us have internal clocks. And you know this very well. Question, is there a time of the day when you feel hungry? Is there a time of the day when you don't feel hungry? Is there a time of the day when you feel sleepy? Is there a time of the day when you don't feel sleepy? Is there a time of the day when you feel nice and clear in your mind and energetic? Is there a time of the day when, that clarity is just not there? All those things are determined by those clocks. And the way that the system that we have been designed works is the following. We have clocks on every organ in our body. So just like the same problem that you have at home, if you have many clocks in your body, especially the battery type, what's going to happen to your clock sooner or later? You're going to start seeing desynchronization. Some clocks are going to go faster, some clocks are going to go slower. So, how do you solve that dilemma? You need to find a clock that you trust and you synchronize every clock in your body, in your house, based on that clock that you trust. The same story happens at the level of your body. Just the normal living and so forth creates desynchronization of your internal clocks, and they require synchronization. That synchronization takes place by the master clock, which is found in the hypothalamus. If you have a brain, you cut it in half, and the bottom part of that brain, that's where you're going to find that hypothalamus. And that hypothalamus, at the same time, needs some synchronization based on things such as bright light, such as diet, and so forth. Can you give me some water? And this synchronization is very important because if you are desynchronized, your body doesn't work properly. And you know this very well. If you don't sleep good, how do you feel? Ooh, great, isn't it? Like lots of energy and so forth. No, because things are desynchronized in your body. Therefore, you cannot even think well, you cannot even, perform well and so forth, because all these things are based on those internal clocks. And we are learning that many diseases have their origin at desynchronization of clocks. People that work shifting type of work that, 1 week they're in the morning, then the other one they're going to be in the evening, and the other one they're going to be in the night. And all that constant change increases the risk for many diseases. In this very interesting study, they were documenting how there's certain times when your body is more optimum at doing things. Thank you. So there's a certain time that you have the best coordination. There's a certain time when you have, more clarity of your mind. There's a certain time when this melatonin starts to be secreted. And as you learn about these things, the name of the game is to work with your clocks and not against those clocks. In this other paper, it was showing how many diseases can come about by not respecting those body clocks. So we know that people that work in shift increase risk of obesity, increased risk of type 2 diabetes, and so forth. This other study was showing how even infertility is increased if you are working that type of shift work, because that disorder creates desynchronization in your clocks, impairing even your cycles. And even females that work at this are going to be referring you, how their menstrual cycles get disturbed and so forth because of that desynchronization that happens. And this is a very interesting study. In this study, what they were doing, they were putting people on shift work. So they had a stable schedule, and then suddenly they were shifting their normal schedule. And that disposition index that you see there, when they were showing the function of the pancreas, it was showing that the pancreas was struggling as you shifted that normal cycle. Your pancreas was struggling just to do its normal work. And the problem is that there's a reason why we have a circadian rhythm. See, if you go to a deserted island, you don't have any cell phone or anything related like that, and just go to sleep on tents, your your clocks are all going to start becoming synchronized because you will become synchronized to the light of the sun. When the sun comes, that's going to wake up, and then as the sun sets, if you don't have any stimulation and so forth, you're going to go to bed very, very soon, and you will become very, very regular. The problem is the modern world that we live in. There's too much interesting things, isn't it? Your tablet, your television, your computer, your cell phone. So then we start creating what is called social jet lag. So we go to bed too late, and that disturbs those cycles. So we don't wake up, refresh and so forth, and you get yourself in this vicious cycle. So if we're going to talk about cycles, we need to learn about melatonin. Melatonin is a phenomenal hormone that has all kinds of benefits. Now you may say, Doctor, where do I buy it? No, don't buy it. Learn to optimize your internal melatonin. Look at all the effects that it has in the body. It helps you with depression. It helps you synchronize your cycles. It helps you with anxiety. It helps females not to have too high estrogen. Too high estrogen can increase risk of cancer. It helps you decrease the blood pressure. It decreases inflammation. Is antioxidant. It helps fight cancer. It helps you deal with pain. It helps you sleep deeply. I'm telling you, this is an extremely important chemical in your body. I have a video about it. It became a viral video. It has 2.8 million views, that video. Now that's the good news. The bad news is that it's in Spanish, the video. But use Google Translate if you need to. So the cycle of melatonin is a fascinating cycle. As soon as the sun sets and there is darkness, levels of melatonin start to increase, preparing you for you to rest. But what do we do, modern men? We have bright lights, and bright lights impair that melatonin. Especially, you know which are the worst lights? The ones that are above you. See, retina has different sensors, and the bottom part of your retina is where you have the most impact on this melatonin. Therefore, bright lights above your head are the ones that are going to disturb the most your melatonin. So it is not a good idea to have bright lights above your head in the night. You want to have that light under you, and if possible, have it red. The red light doesn't have the same effect as the blue light, white light. Now, there's people that say, but doctor, I'm a night owl, I work better, in the evenings and so forth. Well, there's this interesting study that was showing how those night owls have much more mental health problems. And this could be related secondary to that desynchronization that they are creating every night. In fact, look at this interesting study. It was showing that a week of camping can turn you into a morning person. So that night owl becomes a morning person once you regularize those cycles with the sunlight. This topic is so important that the Nobel Prize was we're studying the subject of circadian rhythms. And we know that depression is also linked to disruption of those important. Now, this is a very, very how the level of melatonin is impaired by your metabolism. So notice this. If you are healthy, non-diabetic, the peaks melatonin, your levels of melatonin are nice and high. But if you have diabetes, which is the second line, those people have about half the melatonin. You cut down about half of your melatonin by being diabetic. And if you are having very much an uncontrolled diabetes and you end up with problems like neuropathy and so forth, your level of melatonin even decreases even further. But as we saw, there's good news. Remember the case I was telling you this morning? If you're diabetic, making lifestyle changes is very important for you because your sensitivity, especially type 2 diabetic, to insulin can increase in a matter of days, as we were mentioning in this clinical case. And that's not the only study. There's another one of my studies. In this study, we're showing that in a matter of days after switching to a whole food plant-based diet, exercise, regularity in sleeping, and so forth, within days, the fasting glucose starts to improve as the sensitivity of insulin starts to improve. And this one, another one of my studies in this study, we're showing that in the 18-day program of WEMAR, patients that have high blood pressure and that are taking medication for that blood pressure, after 18 days, if we take all the patients from a whole year, 93% of them have to stop their medication or decrease dramatically the dosage of their blood pressure medication because their blood pressure improved. That's very, very good news for the hypertensive. And this is another one of my studies showing that both systolic and diastolic blood pressure improves, and how also patients that are diabetic, that are not well under control, they increase the risk of depression because that high glucose circulating in the body impairs the normal function of the brain. So in order to help those patients with depression, we need to improve their blood glucose, and then the mental health will improve. Or this other one, I'm in the process of publishing this clinical case. Classic patient that comes to us. This is another one of our patients that came to WEMAR. Patient had diabetes, hypertension, obesity, depression, and he was taking this bag full of medication every single day. In a matter of a couple of months, by helping him improve his lifestyle, we were able to improve all those conditions. He no longer needed all those medications. In fact, you can go to my YouTube page and you can see the interview of the patient itself. And we did the mathematics. How much money the insurance companies and himself is saving by not having to pay all those medications. This is the mathematics. He is saving in a year $53,850. Isn't that what you needed for your down payment for your house? Or your Tesla, exactly what you needed, isn't it? So not only your health improves, your pocket improves as a result of living healthy. So you can find those studies there on that ResearchGate and many more like that. Now, we learned that diabetes decreases melatonin, but what effect does diabetes have on those clock genes? Look at this very interesting study. So here is showing, see, when you are creating synchronization in your body, you need the activation of your body clocks. If the body clocks are not activated correctly, your synchronization cannot take place. So here they're showing how somebody that is healthy but is obese has better activation of their clock genes. Those are the black circles. compared to the people that have type 2 diabetes on the white circles, notice that the clock genes don't activate as much, therefore creating desynchronization, and this can have, domino effect later on. Now, there's many resources. If you're struggling with diabetes, there's many resources that you can do. There's this program called Diabetes Undone. It's an excellent series online that you can take. It'll tell you there, what to eat and the exercise and the sleep and the whole package. There's also programs like the New Star in Weimar, like YouTube Pines, that you can go and participate of that. There's also this book, Reversing Diabetes, excellent book that will tell you, all these things that you need to be doing if you are struggling with diabetes. Now, this is also another interesting study about that melatonin and those clock genes. So, as we mentioned, you have clock genes on every organ. But not only on every organ, but on every cell in your body, you have clock genes. So those clock genes need synchronization, every single cell in your body. And among the different genes involved in this clocks of the body, you have one that is called BMAL. There's another one called clock. There's the reverb herb. There's the pair. And even there's the cry gene. So don't cry if you don't understand. It's not that complicated. So look at this. Very interesting study. How food has an impact on the genes. So what we're learning is the role of fasting. Fasting is very important for your body. So when there is fasting, if the fasting is done at the right time, optimization of the clocks take place. There's a very important principle that says the following. You need to eat with the sun. There's sun, it's time to eat. When there's no sun, it's not time to eat, because that impairs the cycles of synchronization. Unfortunately, this is a bad habit I find here in America. People eat a very skimpy breakfast or skip the breakfast, and most of their calories are ending up in the evening meal. And that's not a good thing, because your body is about to enter into the rest mode, and here you're putting it to work and so forth, and you create desynchronization of those clock genes. In fact, there's something very important in your body called the AMP kinase. AMP kinase is something that has multiple benefits in your body when you activate it. And notice in the top left how when you're fasting and when you're doing exercise, that's when you start improving that AMP kinase. So this AMP kinase, think about it like a sensor of energy in your cells. And I want to have that AMP kinase as much activated as possible throughout the day. But when we eat, we turn off that AMP kinase. I'm not saying don't eat, but we need to eat in the right time, in not to impair that. And when the AMP kinase is activating, it's going to tell your body to stop storing energy and start burning that energy. So somebody whose goal is to lose weight, you want to activate that AMP kinase as much as possible. So think about it like this sensor. The body senses that there is too little energy, either because you're exercising or because you're in fasting mode, and then your body is able to access some of the stored energy that you have. So here are some things that activate your AMP kinase. There are certain nutrients that activate it, such as resveratrol. Now, we've been brainwashed to think that resveratrol, I mean, I need some wine. That's not necessarily the only source. Any fruit and any berry that is dark in color is loaded with by resveratrol. So things like your blueberries and so forth, they're good sources of resveratrol. Turmeric, as we're mentioning in the morning, that's an excellent spice that has all kinds of multiple benefits. Quercetin, very abundant in things like onions, elderberries, cranberries, then ginseng, mulberries, and just the fact that you're eating fiber is activating your AMP kinase. So that's why as you increase your intake of fiber, it makes you feel good, it helps the intestine work better, and you activate your AMP kinase. Exercise, as we mentioned, and then caloric restriction and fasting. Now, how can you have caloric restriction more on the long term type of thing? By switching to a whole food, plant based diet, you're naturally decreasing the excess calories, therefore activating more your AMP kinase. And this is my study, very interesting study. We were documenting how people that are underweight, if they go on a plant-based diet, they don't lose weight. People that are normal weight, if they go on a plant-based diet, they don't lose weight. Only people that are overweight and obese will lose weight on the plant-based diet. Do you see the beauty of this? It means if you have excess body weight, as you switch to that whole food plant-based diet, you start losing that excess body weight. And once you come to your normal weight, it will stabilize there. And this is also another interesting study. So we were learning, that diabetes is starting to disturb the melatonin. And here, look at this. The condition of your health has an impact on the activation of the clock genes that create synchronization. So look at the progression there. People that are healthy but not in shape, they have this reverb aid. This is one of the clock genes, nice and activated. Now, people that are unhealthy, not in shape, notice there's less activation. People that are obese, less activation. And people with type 2 diabetes have the less activation. So what we need to do, we need to start, making those proper lifestyle changes so that we can start progressing in that cycle. In that way, your clocks are going to start becoming more synchronized, and you will feel that in your own health, how you become more energetic, your sleep quality improves, and so forth, as the activation of those genes take place. And this one, very interesting study, your clock genes and when you eat. So this was a crossover trial. Crossover means you start both groups, and then in the middle, you switch them. So you can make sure that while you're applying the intervention, it really has the effect on the groups. And here's what they found out. See, when you are eating breakfast is a synchronized behavior. So eating breakfast is very important for your body to have that synchronization of the clocks. And when you change that schedule, you start eating too late and not too early and so forth, you create desynchronization of your clock genes. Also, what you eat has an effect. So this is my study. In this study, we were documenting how irregularity, eating at all different times of the day, not going to bed at the same time and waking up at the same time, Those type of things create problems with depression. That's what we're documenting in our study. So in this study, they were showing how people that eat high fat foods create desynchronization in their bodies. So we need to be very careful. Look, fat makes food taste better, no question about it. But sometimes we get used to all that high fat type of foods, and those things create desynchronization of your clock genes. And this other one, also very interesting study, the Western type of diet, which is characterized with lots of animal products, lots of refined foods, very low, real nutrients in that food. Notice that that type of food created desynchronization in your clock genes. While the Mediterranean type of diet, rich in fruits, vegetables, beans, lentils, chickpeas, and so forth, you start synchronizing and stimulating all kinds of good clock genes in your body. And this is a very eye-opening study. This is a study made by Arabs about this Ramadan. You know, this Ramadan, this time of the year in which the Muslims, they don't eat during the day, they don't drink during the day, at least they're not supposed to, and only in the evenings after sunset, that's when they eat, that's when they take their liquids. So I've been in Ramadan there this was in Kuwait, and I saw that with my own eyes. And this is the way that it works. See, Ramadan is actually the name of one of their months. As we have September and we have February and so forth, they have a month by the name of Ramadan when they do that fasting for that whole month. Now, the month before Ramadan is a month by the name of Shaban. That's their Arab name for that month. Now, notice here, fascinating this study, how during Ramadan, notice the tremendous desynchronization that they cause in their clock gene on the left side. See, during Shaban, when they were doing their normal eating patterns of eating your breakfast and so forth, you have nice synchronization of the body clocks. But when they started doing the Ramadan, notice the tremendous desynchronization that they created in their body, secondary by eating what you're not supposed to. I told you, you're supposed to eat with the sun and not eat when there's no sun. And they do exactly the opposite, and you can see the effect there. You impair your clock genes. And you can see it. You know, as I told you, I've been many times in the Middle East during Ramadan. People are, in bad mood and so forth, for during this whole month. And this other one, also very interesting study, it was showing how when you have regularity in your eating habits, your body clocks synchronize better compared to the people that are grazing. They're just eating the whole day. That behavior is not good for your body clocks because you don't let the digestive system work better and so forth. And this is my cousin. She had problems with her weight, and she just got herself on the intermittent fasting, and look at what happened to her. She started regaining her normal body weight secondary to the synchronization that she started to create by eating at the right times. So, in summary, what we are learning is that intermittent fasting has an effect on our body clocks, that our microbiota has an effect on the body clocks, that our lifestyle has an effect on our body clocks, and those circadian rhythms have a big effect on our metabolism, either to make it worse or to improve it. And that's going to have an impact on the type of diseases you are going to develop. And look at this fascinating counsel. Lots of wisdom here in this counsel. At least 5 to 6 hours should intervene between the meals. And most people who give the plan a trial will find that 2 meals a day are better than 3. I mean, how does she know about the body clocks and synchronization and so forth? This is like the latest, that we are learning in the world of intermittent fasting, how that 2 meals a day type of plan, you optimize your internal clocks, therefore things work much better. Personally, myself, I've been following that plan since 1997, and I love it. It works very well with me. So we're gonna have a break, or I don't know, and
Yeah, we are going to have a break, and I know that after lunch, the blood is going into stomach, and if you are feeling ready to sleep, please stand up. Please stand up. Not all of you, if you don't, but those of you who are sleepy, stretch a little bit. I also read something. This is amazing facts that you can find here. I also read here. Uh, when you sit for 6 hours, listen, oxygen consumption level decrease, making even simple exercises more difficult. Risk of colon cancer rises by 2 times, and risk of rectal cancers rises by 44%. So when you are constantly sitting, think about this. Think. And so this is really, really so many facts that you can find. After the second presentation, we will have opportunity to take it. Okay, so stretch a little bit, walk a little bit around, and then we'll go to the next session. All right? But only stay here. It's important. This one is about mental health and about dementia. I will go to bring the books. By the way, the price for you is, they were selling this for $20. The price for you is only $5. We are not selling today. You can take the books with, I believe that you will bring the money, okay? Again, we are giving in faith that you will do what is right to do. I have maybe one or two back there. I think that all books are gone. So I would expect that to the church treasury, $250 will come back. I pretty much, I'm going to take a picture of all present here so that I have, okay. All right. Okay. Are we ready to start? Yes, doctor. Dr. Harden. Bring to the church, to the Columbus First Seventh-day Adventist Church, check or cash. Our treasurer is here, Mr. Roy. Okay, you can see him. So thank you so much, Doctor. I know that this subject, all of these are interesting. By the way, after this session, you will have time for asking questions. If it's something personal and everything, you may see Doctor after the presentations. This is really relevant today, specifically during the time of COVID and after COVID, mental health, and also you're going to connect also with dementia. So one more time, we are blessed to have Dr. Ramirez with us.
Well, the other day I was speaking in the Caribbean, and they were very nice to take me down to do a little bit of scuba diving. And look who I was diving with. They were like really, really close. They were talking about, 2 feet from me. Look at that, how close they were. Could literally touch them there. Last time I heard, I don't think they're vegetarian, these creatures, isn't it? Mexico is a beautiful country. Let me show you a few pictures of Mexico. This canyon is actually deeper than the Grand Canyon. It's called the Copper Canyon. You can take a train ride and you go around it. And very, very nice and deep. There's many volcanoes in Mexico. Some of them are still active. This is a town that was overrun by the lava of the volcanoes. And there's also many places that are very fertile. And this is a special formation called the cenote. It's this underground rivers. They dissolve the upper part of the ground and they make these big, deep holes. And the water is very, very transparent. In the northern part of Mexico, there's many deserts. And look at this one. These are some hot springs. You can go on those hot springs and at the same time take the beautiful view down there of the valley. This is close to where I grew up. If you notice, not too many trees. Very different from Georgia. Okay? There are some, but not too many. And this is a very special place. This place is called the Hidden Beach. Look at the way that it is. It's a protected place. Only a few people at a time can go there in that hidden beach. And this is where I grew up. This is called Ensenada. If you notice in the mountains, not too many trees. We have cactuses, we have plenty. And this special place has this hole in the rock. So when the wave comes at the right angle, it goes inside there and the water just shoots up very nice and high. It's something quite unique. And these are the biggest crystals in the world. This was a mine in the state that is located under Texas. That state is called Chihuahua, like the dog, the Chihuahua dog. And in that state, there's a lot of mines of copper. So they drain this mine and these humongous crystals form. It's very hot there, so you cannot stay there for too long. And out of this plant, they make a very dangerous poison by the name of tequila. Avoid it. It's not good for you. Now, before it's tequila, is agave nectar. And that stuff is good for you. You know, it's excellent sweetener. The way they do that, they cut the top part of this plant, and that liquid accumulates, and it's like the maple syrup. They boil that liquid, and that's how they make the famous agave nectar. And this plant also, if you take the middle part of the plant, you cut all those big branches, and you put that over the fire. This thing is like sweet as sugar. You know, it's something you have to really taste it to see what I'm talking about. This is the biggest mountain in Mexico, 5.6 kilometers. And here are some of the other parts of the desert in the northern part of Mexico. And look at this algae. They make the water this color. That's located in the southern part of Mexico. So this special algae transform the water into that nice and pink color. And this is an oasis town. So you can see it's a desert around, and then suddenly there's a source of water. So it's able to have all that population there. The weather there is just perfect year round. It's about 72 degrees the whole year. So actually, lots of people go there to retire. You know, it's a nice place, nice weather. You have a nice golf place and so forth. This is located in the peninsula of Mexico. And this is a fascinating place. This is a special forest in the middle part of Mexico where the monarch butterflies from Canada and America, they migrate there for the winter. So you go to that forest, there's millions of butterflies there waiting for the weather to warm up, and then they fly back again to America. Now, have you seen the brain of a butterfly? How big is it? They don't even know where to go, isn't it? How do they are able to manage to go from Canada to Mexico? That's a long ways, you know. I think somebody wiser than the butterfly, isn't it? It's telling them and showing them, hey, go that way, and that's how they end up, you know, in this particular forest down in Mexico. And there's still some active volcanoes. This is one of them. It's not constantly active, but you see, you know, smoke plumes there on a regular basis, and once in a while, some lava comes out. And this is a volcano that you see as you land into Mexico City. It's a big, big volcano. Let's see if you can say the name of this volcano. It's called the Popocatépetl. Or you can call it on the short name, the Popo. Much easier, huh? So Popocatépetl means, in the Indian language, the mountain that smokes. Because, you know, you can see that smoke coming out of that big, big mountain. So let's get busy here. Look at this interesting study. This is a few things I put on my Twitter. This one, fascinating study. If you have too much bright lights in the evening, you increase your mortality from 21 to 34%. That's exactly what we're talking about, you know, because of the desynchronization that you cause. While if you expose yourself to bright light in the day, you actually lower your mortality from 17 to 34%. And now you know why, because of the synchronization that you do. So one of the best things you can do, early in the morning, go out and do your exercise. That's the perfect time to do your exercise. If it's cold or whatever, it doesn't matter. In my book, I have a saying there from the Norwegians that say, there's not such thing as bad weather, there's bad clothes. So that's why you deal with this cold, you know, to dress correctly and you can go out. This one, those forever chemicals, is something very worrisome. These forever chemicals, as you partake of them, There's a reason why they're called forever chemicals, because they stay in your body. So we need to be aware of them and do things to decrease their exposure to those forever chemicals. This one, very interesting study. This is from National Geographic, how Seventh-day Adventists have something that they attend religious services. And in this study, it was shown that attending religious services adds to your life between 4 to 14 years of age if you attend religious services 4 times in a month. It happens to be every weekend. So not a bad idea, isn't it, to participate of one of these faith-based services. And this other one, we were going to be talking about how that dementia gene, we'll talk a little bit more about it, doesn't mean you're going to have dementia. It increases your risk, but that does not mean you definitely need to have the dementia. And this other one, very interesting study. This is journal JAMA, how pharmaceuticals and manufacturers of devices in America use $1 billion in a 10-year period to influence scientific journals. So you can see a lot of money here is involved in this. And this was published in the journal JAMA. And this one also interesting, how the levels of energy that you have are directly related to your mom. So our levels of energy, this research is suggesting that comes from our mothers. And this one about those zombie cells we're talking about, remember in the morning? I told you those zombie cells that work like a spoiled fruit that starts spoiling other fruits. In this study, it was shown that one of the best ways to decrease those zombie cells is by doing exercise. So exercise is not only good to make us feel good, but also to decrease those zombie cells. So again, you find those studies on that Twitter account and many more like that. So let's talk about stopping dementia before it stops you. I have this project that I want to do, a dementia prevention project. I've been working years about this. And this information is, as Isaac Newton says, the reason why I can see a little bit farther away is because I'm standing in the shoulders of giants. And some of the shoulders of giants that we're going to be talking about are these giants. Research is coming out of these major universities that is giving a lot of hope for the prevention of dementia. And the paradigm of medicine is currently in an interesting discussion. In the old days, we had a very linear type of paradigm of medicine. You have a disease, you're supposed to make a diagnosis, you're supposed to give the treatment, and they're supposed to get better. But the reality is that they're not always get better. So what's going on? We are discovering the power and developing the concept of personalized medicine. Personalized medicine has to do with even more factors than that linear paradigm. Because we're all different, yes or no? We have different backgrounds, we have different cultures, we have different ethnicities, we have different genetic backgrounds. So personalized medicine takes into account all these factors in order to solve the problematic that we're facing as society. And one of the most sad diseases around happens to be the problem of dementia. And this is communicated by this artist. This is an artist that was doing self-portraits. Here you see an image of him in 1967. And then when he got diagnosed with dementia, this is how he painted himself. Then like this, and like this, then like this, then like this, then like this. So you start losing your ability to even use your motor abilities and so forth. So we're learning that we need to take into account all the various factors in order to customize the treatment that we are giving to our patients. And that's the approach that we try to do with depression. So, with depression, we did this study. You can find it there on my ResearchGate page, the one I told you. And we asked the question, what's causing depression? And what we did, we searched the scientific literature and we found more than 100 different causes of depression. And what we did, we summarized those 100 plus causes into 10 groups. And this is the list of 10 factors that we came out about. So it is our hypothesis, it is our idea that if you have 4 or more of those factors active at the same time, you will develop depression. And the beauty of this is that from that list of 10 factors, only 1 and 2 you cannot reverse. The rest of the 8 factors you can potentially reverse. And when you reverse those factors, mental health starts to improve. Let me give you an example. Christy, a patient of ours, she gave us permission to share this story. She grew up in a good family, but started hanging around the wrong type of friends, which started driving her into addictions and so forth. And it came to the point that her life was a complete mess with addictions. And her parents tricked her. They told her, Christy, we want to take you to a spa. Come, get on the car. Let us take us to a spa. You're going to get some good massage and so forth. Well, they brought her to our depression program, which, yes, we do use some spa things there, but it's not a spa for sure. So because she felt tricked, she tried to escape the program. We got her. She tried to escape a second time. We got her again. She tried to escape a third time. We got her again. She tried to escape a fourth time. We got her again. So we had a staff meeting. We said, we need to do something about Christy, because if not, she's going to end up leaving this program. So we decided that somebody was going to sleep outside the door, her door. So in case, she tried to escape in the middle of the night, she would stumble there and be stopped. And something happened to her. She felt that we really wanted to help her. So now she started cooperating with the program. And as she started cooperating with the program, her mental health started to improve to the point that when she finished the program, she wanted to stay longer there for the days that she missed, trying to be a rebel and trying to quit the program. And today, Christy is completely depression-free. She is happily married. She just finished a graduate degree and, in fact, uses her free time to teach others about how to prevent mental health problems. In fact, if you want to listen to her testimony, you can find it there on 3ABN Australia. Just Google Christy Christopher by the word of their testimony, 3ABN. And it should take you there to that page. You can listen to it free, her story. And here you can see what happened to depression when we deal with the causes of the depression. What do? From that list of 10 factors, we identify those factors, we make the right changes, and you can see the tremendous improvement that happens in the before and after on our patients as we deal with the root causes of mental health. So, if somebody here wants to get Alzheimer's disease, let me give you the keys how you can have Alzheimer's disease. Make sure you eat lots of sugar and meat. Don't sleep enough. Don't do exercise. Make sure your hormones are all over the place. Make sure your vitamin D is nice and low. And I guarantee you, you're going to end up with that type 2 Alzheimer's dementia. Beware of it, because if you fool around, you're going to have problems. And the problem is that is a disease that increases with age. In people over 60, 1 in 20 will end up with dementia. In people over 80, 1 in 5. And one of the challenges of dementia is that we are predicting that we're going to see a tremendous increase on it. As public health interventions are doing its job, we can see that things like heart disease and stroke can potentially come down. But look at what we expect regarding dementia, an increase of 89%. Currently, 35 million people have dementia. We expect by 2050 that to grow to 115 million people. So I'm very happy you're here today, because you're going to be learning what you can practically do to start decreasing that risk. And here you can see, where do we find the highest levels of dementia in the world? Where's America there? In that red color. So if you live in Georgia and you live like the average Georgian, beware. It means we need to start making some changes, because we are at very increased risk for dementia here. Now, I'm going to be using interchangeably the words dementia and Alzheimer's. Dementia, there's many different types of dementia. But it happens to be that the most common type of dementia here in Georgia happens to be the Alzheimer's dementia. That's the most common one. And 5 warning signs that somebody may be starting to develop dementia include memory loss, that it starts to interfere in your ability of your day-to-day living. For example, you got in the car and went to the store, and they're like, man, why did I go to the store? I don't remember why I went there. Beware, that's not something normal. Difficulty performing things that you usually do on a regular basis. Now you have a hard time doing those things. Problems with language. You're speaking and you cannot find the word. You have the word here, but you just cannot say it. Beware of that. Disorienting in time and place. You don't know where you are. You don't know what time it is. You don't know around what time of the year you're at, and so forth. And impair judgment. Like my friend was telling me that how a first symptom of his dad dementia, they were driving in the city, and suddenly he floored the accelerator, started going like super, super fast, That's when they started warning, hey, something is wrong with my dad, And as they went and took him to the doctor and ran a specialized test, sure enough, he was having the beginning stages of dementia. So a question that I get asked very often is, doctor, what's the difference between normal aging and dementia? Isn't that a good question? So it is normal to start forgetting some things, things that usually we don't use and so forth. That's okay to forget. Let's say you went to the some Caribbean island 20 years ago, and you try some exotic fruit down there. And then 20 years later, I ask you, hey, what's the name of that fruit you tried there in the Caribbean island? And you're like, man, I remember it tastes really good, but I don't remember the name. That's okay to forget. I mean, you're not seeing this fruit every day. But if you start forgetting an orange and apple, I get worried because you see these things on a regular basis. You shouldn't be forgetting these things. So, especially as you age, your intelligence will remain the same, but your speed will decrease. So that means if you were really, really smart when you were a little kid, you'll continue to be very smart as you get older. And I have some bad news. If you were not very bright when you were young, some story will continue like that. So the sad part about dementia is that is like a tree that is losing its leaves. That's how the pathologists describe that type of brain and that shrinking that start to take place. On the right side, you can see the severe Alzheimer's disease versus a healthy brain. So dementia is the decreased ability to process information together with changes in personality and behavior. And the diagnosis is done by checking a memory side of things, checking the executive function of the brain, your frontal lobe, and that problem keeps getting worse and worse and worse and worse. That's why we need to stop this thing at the level of the prevention. Don't wait until you get that diagnosis because then you're in really big trouble. And Alzheimer's dementia goes to different stages. First, the mild type of dementia. This one, the problems are forgetting names, forgetting addresses. People that have lived for a long time in the same place, they have a hard time finding their home. They need to use their GPS. They just forget about it. And if you don't stop this thing, it's going to go into this moderate type of dementia. Here, you're even forgetting your relatives. Here, you don't even take care of yourself. You start removing the inhibitions. You don't understand why it's not right to come down for breakfast without your pants. You know, the person doesn't take care of themselves and so forth. And the sad part of the disease, the severe dementia, which the mind is completely gone. They are completely dependent on others, and they're completely lost and so forth. Some of them are just shouting. They don't know what's going on. If you bring me somebody with stage 3 type of dementia and you say, doctor, do something for him, I'm going to tell him, I'm sorry, I cannot do anything for this person. Who I want to talk to are the children of this man. Those are the ones I need to talk to because they can start doing changes to avoid and decrease the risk that this person end up having. So as I tell people, this is like a boat. So how good your boat is has to do with your genetics and has to do with your early environment. And the way you live your lifestyle, it's what's going to determine if your boat is going to be nice and strong and will continue floating for a long time, or if you're going to wreck your boat and you're going to have, an early sinking of your boat. So what you're doing in your 30s and 40s, what type of diet you're following, what level of stress, are you sleeping enough? Are you having obesity? Are you starting to have insulin resistance? Is your blood pressure starting to get out of control? If your choices have not been the best, by the time you reach your 50s, that's when the cracks start to appear. And we see this in the form of something called the amyloid protein. That's those cracks are starting to appear there in the boat. You better get on the ball here because if you don't make the right changes, then By the time you reach your 60s, water is coming inside that boat. And even if you try to remove that water, it's too much water coming in, and you're going to end up sinking that boat early. Now, there's a gene for increased risk of dementia. That gene is called the APOE4. Now, this gene, guess what it measures? It measures inflammation, is what this gene is about. So, people with this gene, small mistakes in the lifestyle have a huge impact in them because their body responds with tremendous inflammation. Now, in the old days, this was something good to have, because in the old days we didn't have all these antibiotics and so forth. So if you responded with a lot of inflammation, that was good. You had a survival advantage. But now we live in a clean world. We're not fighting with so many of those parasites and so forth, as many as we were facing in the old days. But now, bad mistakes in your lifestyle can have a huge toll on you if you have that gene. So that means that this is not a sentence for Alzheimer's. This is just a high risk of it. So you need to make the proper changes. And if you have 2 copies of this gene, that's when the risk increases very much. And here's the statistics. What are the odds that you're going to have this APOE4 gene? So you can see people with African American blood are the ones that have the highest risk, with 34% of them carrying that gene. In the second place are the Europeans. 1 out of 4 people are going to have, if you're European, will have the gene for APOE4. So watch out for that. And here you can see some factors that increase or decrease the risk of dementia. So let's start with the common ones: depression, alcohol, stroke. Then you can see the APOE4, not enough stimulation, diabetes, heart disease, vitamin D deficiency, hearing problems. The C-reactive protein, that marker that is there, that measures inflammation. So having that high inflammation increases your risk for dementia. While education and strong arm grip, that's a marker of health. Somebody that is well physically fit, you decrease your risk for dementia as you increase your body, your muscle mass. So here's the latest report. You find it on my Twitter, this one also. This one came in the Lancet just a few weeks ago. So less education increases risk of dementia. Hearing loss, a lot of that hearing loss is related to atherosclerosis, high cholesterol. You block those arteries that go to the ear and you lose your hearing. High LDL, depression, traumatic injury, physical inactivity, diabetes, smoking, hypertension, obesity, excess alcohol. As you can see, we can do a lot for those factors. Even the lack of education. What can you do if you don't have enough education? You can start learning. There's community colleges. There's my book there, so you can read it. There's online courses and so forth. So that's not an excuse. You cannot say, I didn't have opportunity to do it. Well, never too late. You can start to challenge your brain. Well, things also that decrease: social isolation, air pollution, and eye problems. So you can see 45% of potentially modifiable changes that we can do. And look at this interesting process. To me, it's very interesting that there's people that have the same age. When we check their artery, some of them, their artery looks like that. Some of them, their artery looks like this. What made the difference? Bad luck. The choices that we are taking are either stimulating the artery clogging mechanisms of our body, or they're stimulating the artery cleansing mechanisms of our body. The same story happens with the cells that make our bones strong, or the cells that make our bones weak. So you have these cells that are destroying your bones, or you have these cells that are building up your bones. Which type of bones you're going to end up having has to do with which of these processes you're stimulating through exercise, vitamin D, proper rest, enough protein, and all these important factors. The same story happens at the level of your brain. There are processes that stimulate the destruction of your connections of your brain. There are processes that stimulate the buildup of the connections of your brain. That path is mediated by something called the APP. And that APP is stimulated by something by the name of inflammation. Anything that is inflammatory, it's causing loss of your connections in your brain. Now you may say, but doctor, the other day I went to McDonald's and ate a cheeseburger, and I didn't forget anything. Well, the reason why you didn't forget anything is because you have billions of these connections. But keep doing that every day, and you will see what's going to happen in the next 20 years. You're going to lose so many of those connections, you're going to get yourself in really big trouble. So, here's one interesting hypothesis of the causes of depression. So, here you can see how many pathways lead to dementia. So, you have type 1, that one is stimulated by infectious things and inflammatory things. Anything that is inflammatory will increase that risk of type 1. By the way, usually the person doesn't end up with dementia with just one pathway. Usually it's many pathways that led them to that. Then you have the type 2, the atrophic. Your brain needs certain hormones, certain nutrients. And if you're not providing those things, you are removing that support of the brain, increasing your risk of that type 2 atrophic type of dementia. Then what is called 1.5 or glycotoxic. Glyco means glucose, and toxic, the toxicity of the glucose. Type 1.5, this one has to do with insulin resistance. So many of the brains that end up with dementia have insulin resistance in that brain. That's why it's such a big deal, that insulin resistance, that diabetes and so forth. You need to have that under control ASAP. And then type 3 toxins, things like mercury, things like lead, and some other heavy metals can have an effect. And then type 4, vascular or traumatic. Both of them are the same pathway. Vascular is because of bad diet and so forth, smoking. You create atherosclerosis that goes to the brain. Not enough blood reaches the brain suffers, and you open the door for dementia. Or a significant hit to the brain that causes the brain to bounce inside your skull, breaking down blood vessels. So it's the same pathway. That's why also that one is type 4. And this one, very interesting study, how severe infections are gateway to dementia. Because as we mentioned, those diseases create inflammation. Now, if you're going to try to solve this with medication, it doesn't work. Every single medication that has been tried to stop dementia, it doesn't work. The only one that works a little bit was memantadine, which works just a little bit and then stops working. So instead, what we can do? Well, look at this clinical case. This lady had dementia, had family with dementia, and the thing that she started noticing when she was reading a book, when she read by the bottom of the page, she didn't have a clue what she was reading at the beginning. And she was living in the same place many years. She couldn't get there without her iPad and GPS. So what they did with her, they started finding the causes of dementia and started reversing those causes. And she noticed that her memory started to improve dramatically by dealing with those root causes. We'll come back to that in a minute. And one time she had a stomach flu and she got off the whole program. No more exercise, started partaking of alcohol and junk food and so forth. She started noticing her memory problems started to come back. That scared her off enough to get back to the program. And by the time they published the clinical case 3 years later, she didn't have a single symptom of dementia. So, as we will be learning this afternoon, there's many things we can change. And the name of the game is to identify many of those risk factors and avoid them to decrease the risk. So as I tell to my patients, this is like a roof that has 36 holes. If you have a roof with 36 holes, what happens if you just close one of those holes and it rains? You're still going to get wet. And I see this very often. For example, the other day I was in, because I'm a such frequent flyer, I get upgraded, to business class and this type of thing. So they upgraded me there. And then next to me, there was a guy, I think he was very worried about dementia because he was doing all this Sudoku and crosswords and so forth, which I'm not against, go for it, do those things. But look at him. Here he is trying to, stimulate his brain with this type of exercises, which is good. But then when the beverage cart comes, what's his choice? Wine. I mean, that's a wrong choice if you want to avoid dementia. That stuff is very inflammatory. And then when the meal cart comes and they ask him what's his choice, what's the food he chose? Chicken. That's the wrong food to eat if you're trying to avoid dementia. That stuff, has all this saturated fat, cholesterol, which stimulates the atherosclerosis to his brain. And then even though we're in business class, the seat actually becomes a bed and it's getting overnight the flight. Instead of him catching some sleep, I wake up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom. He's just wasting his time there watching movies the whole night. I mean, that's the wrong thing to do. You shouldn't be trying, to catch some sleep and so forth. So can you see the problem with him? Here he is focusing on one of his holes, which he should be focusing on. But what about the rest of the holes? Don't leave holes open because you're going to get wet when it rains. So let's go and see briefly a few of these things. So one thing that we need to work on is to work on implementing a whole food plant-based diet. Now people come to me and try to negotiate about this one. Oh, doctor, but what about once a week if I eat chicken and so forth? It's too much cholesterol. You are damaging your arteries, you're creating inflammation, and you're opening the door for all kinds of problems. So that's what work on this patient that you saw. How we were able to help him reverse his multiple conditions with the help of the plant-based diets. So we know that leafy greens slow decline and sharpen memory. Cholesterol levels associated with onset of Alzheimer's disease. Beware on the internet, there's some quacks there that are saying that it doesn't matter your levels of cholesterol and so forth. That's not true. They do mine quite a bit. You need to keep those cholesterol numbers in check. Healthy eating and reduce risk of cognitive decline. Wrong eating habits can hurt your brain, not just your waistline. Beware of that. And this question about the coconut oil. Coconut oil increases that LDL cholesterol, which is related to damage of the arteries. That's why it's not the best oil to partake. Another thing you can do, switch to that 2 meals a day program. You have a 12-hour between your last meal in the evening and your breakfast. That fasting period creates some ketosis, and that's beneficial in the reparation of your brain cells. Look at this study. Intermittent fasting enhances the ability of nerve cells to repair the DNA. That's exactly what I want. If your DNA is not repairing your brain cell is going to die. So the intermittent fasting helps on that healing process at the level of your brain. You need to optimize your sleep. You need to be shooting at sleeping at least 7 hours a night. Some people need the 8 hours depending on you. And this is something that is very interesting that we're just starting to learn more about. How the brain, there's this liquid in our brain that switches direction in deep sleep as your body is in cleansing mode. So if you're not sleeping enough, your brain is not being cleansed enough. Look at this one. Less REM sleep tied to greater risk of dementia. Finish your sleep, else your brain begins to eat itself. It's dangerous to be skipping sleep. Regularly getting less than 6 hours of sleep a night could cause the same long-term damage as alcohol abuse. That's how bad it is not to sleep enough. You find this on my Twitter also. Another thing we need to do enough exercise. This is something that is extremely important. You need to put it in your agenda. Exercise keeps dementia at bay. Running and walking significantly boost brain power. And as I mentioned to you, your speed, it's related to your dementia risk. So people that walk faster have less risk. How are you going to walk faster? By being physically fit. That's why this is an investment that you do. And this is going to be some of the dividends that you will get from getting on your regular exercise program. You need to stimulate your brain by doing things that go out of your comfort zone. As I tell people, one of the worst things you can do for your brain is retirement. So if you retire, you need to keep on challenging your brain. You cannot be on the neutral gear, So you need to volunteer and so forth. Also study things like prophecy and proverbs. Your homocysteine, this is a big deal. If you have problems with your vitamin B12, your homocysteine can go up, and homocysteine can clog your arteries. So that's why we need to keep that vitamin B12 in check. My goal, when I check on blood, needs to be more than 500. I need to keep my C-reactive protein nice and low. C-reactive protein is a marker of inflammation. So as you decrease inflammation, CRP is going to go down. I need to keep my glucose factors under control, such as my fasting insulin or my hemoglobin A1C. And my hormones need to be nice in balance. Look at this one. I've seen many people that have problems with their thyroid and they refuse to take that medication. It is extremely dangerous to do that. Look at this study. Low thyroid hormone is associated with 81% increased risk of dementia. So if you need this, you better take it because your brain is very much dependent on that thyroid. You need to have good social support, belong to something that meets on a regular basis, like a church, is good for you. That's why I'm very against this Zoom church and stuff like that. You need to be surrounded by humans. It is not good to be there, just by yourself watching those things. Part of the process is to be interacting with others and so forth. That is something good for us. Also, reduce stress, as I was mentioning to you, um, confession, forgiveness, and so forth. You need to be eating enough fiber so you can have a good microbiota in your intestines. You need to make sure your vitamin D is good levels. And this is a good idea to measure this, you know, once or twice a year so you can know where your vitamin D is. As a doctor, we cannot tell how your level is. You need a laboratory that's going to show us exactly where you're at and your vitamin D. Avoid caffeine. Let me show you why caffeine is not good for you. Coffee can cause your brain to shrink, increasing your risk of dementia by 53%. I mean, why would you want to increase your risk of dementia by 53%? This is something that to me doesn't make sense. You can find this video on my YouTube page, the one I show you there. Is this reporter from ABC News. She takes a study that shows the blood flow of the brain. Then she takes 1 cup of coffee, and then she repeats the study. This is her brain before the caffeine. This is her brain after the coffee. 40% decrease of blood flow to the brain. You think that's good? No, this is not. That's the reason why you're doing exercise, so that you can increase the blood flow to the brain. So here's this thing, decreasing that's not good for you. Make sure you're eating plenty of antioxidants, not in pills, but in your fruits and vegetables. Avoid all forms of alcohol. Even moderate drinking is linked to changes in brain structure. This is my study showing how alcohol increases your risk of depression. Largest study of its kind, this study in France, finds alcohol use is the biggest risk factor for dementia. Where they use plenty of alcohol there in France. Make sure you're eating your zinc and copper through your legumes. That's one of the best sources for your zinc. Make sure you don't have sleep apnea. How do you know if you have sleep apnea? Ask your partner. Like sleeping, and then you suddenly stop breathing, and then, that stuff is not good, because that lack of oxygen creates tremendous inflammation in your body. If you have that problem, you need to talk to an ear, nose, and throat physician. They have many options they can give you there. And one of the best things you can do is to lose weight. As you gain weight, that weight is gaining the throat, and that sometimes is what collapses your airways at night. But by losing weight, you decrease the risk. Make sure you avoid heavy metals like lead and mercury. This is my study. In this study, we're showing that excess fish consumption is actually increases the risk of depression. We believe that has to do with the toxicity that you bring through all that fish. So as you can see, it is not just one magical thing. The name of the game is to try to identify as many of those factors and do those proper changes. So as soon as possible, start to decrease inflammation. We talked about that in the first service. We need to decrease oxidation by avoiding too much iron in our bodies. We need to decrease insulin resistance, where we saw with this man what the changes he did. And we need to keep our lipids under control, those cholesterols and triglycerides. Another clinical case. This a lawyer, 74-year-old lawyer, he had family that had dementia. He started having problems with his memory and finding the right words. He would get stuck trying to find the right words. When they check his genes, he had the dementia gene. And when they test him for dementia, the numbers didn't go very well. They tried the medication, nothing helped. So what did he do? He identified the holes in his roof and started making the proper changes. And his test for dementia started improving tremendously as a result of those changes. And he needed to do a business trip for many weeks, and he got off completely the lifestyle. Started drinking coffee again and drinking alcohol and all this meat and so forth. And he started noticing that his memory problems started to come back. That scared him off to go back to the right lifestyle. And after they published the clinical case, he didn't have a single symptom of dementia. So as you can see, we can do a lot to prevent this dementia. We're not just victims. We can make the proper changes. So I hope as a church, you can do that change, in a community way, so that this place can become a place of healing. And those people outside that need help can come and find the help that they need. Thank you so much for your attention. And I think there's some couple of questions that we'll be dealing with.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It was such a blessing to so many informations. First of all, I'm going to ask, we are going to ask if you're willing to share something to lower the expenses. If it's a free will. If you can, it's a free will offering. If you can give a free will offering, it is now time to do that. While they are going to go around and pass the plate, it's up to you. We are glad that you're here with us. It's all free, but if you are willing to share something, we appreciate. Now, that's one thing. Pardon me? Yeah, you can turn to YouTube. Those of you who are on YouTube, we appreciate and we are thankful. Have a blessed afternoon.